The words for today's meditation come from the appointed Psalm, Psalm 66, verse 5. Come and see what God has done, how awesome his works on man's behalf. He turned the sea into dry land, and they passed through the river on foot. Come, let us rejoice in him. This is our text. This year's our sermon series will be looking at the appointed psalms for the day. And this psalm is a psalm in which we rejoice. We rejoice because of the invitation, come and see what God has done. I'll never forget one time when I was still in the seminary, I was with a friend of mine on summer vacation or Easter break, and we had gone to the Cayman Islands. And one day I was out there swimming, we were snorkeling, and after we came back, my swimming partner said to me, "Did you see the sea turtle?" I said, "Oh, no, I didn't see the sea turtle. You know, if you see a sea turtle, you should tell me about this thing." So the next day we were out swimming, and he calls me over. He says, "Steve, over here." And he's about 100 yards from me at this point, so I swim over to him to see what he saw. I was hoping I'd see a sea turtle this time. And he turns to me and says, "See how far we've drifted?" I wasn't too excited about that. I wish it would have been opposite. He would have told me about the sea turtle and not how far we had drifted. But sometimes what excites one person may not excite the other. But in our text today, the Lord tells us something that we can be excited about, something that we have to go and see. You know, sometimes in a house, when it gets sleeping time, you have children, know how strange positions that children can sometimes sleep. And when Marco's in a very strange sleeping position, I just say, "Jill, you got to see this. You got to see how Marco's sleeping now." And the reason for that is because it makes us laugh. Today, the psalmist tells us to come and see what the Lord has done. Not that it makes us laugh, but that it gives us great joy. What's interesting is what the psalmist then says after that. First of all, how awesome his works in man's behalf. Look and see what God has done. And realize one reason why God has done it, he's done it for you. What a wonderful and awesome reality this is. Our God who created the universe, our God who created the expanse of space, our God who created the oceans, our God who created the mountains, our God who created the trees, the flowers, and all the intricacies that we see in creation. God has done it for us. And sometimes when we wake up in the morning and see the beautiful sunrise, we realize that God not only is a great creator, but our God is also a great artist. And even these small things, he brings us reasons to rejoice. Consider the people that God has brought into your life. Those that God has brought into your life so that your burden, your load in life may be a little lighter. Sometimes people that come in bring a little extra load for you as well. But the Lord brings people into your life who let you realize how gracious a God we have, how loving a God we have, who is always there at the right time saying the right word to remind you, yeah, life is a little difficult now, but I'm not going through life alone. My God continues to be with me. My God continues to strengthen me. God does this because of his love for his people, because of his love for you and for me. What a gracious God we have. Come and see that the Lord is good. Sometimes I also, when I'm watching a ball game, see a great play. And sometimes to Jill's consternation, because she's doing something, she's probably cooking or cleaning or something busy at the time, I said, Jill, stop, you got to see this play. And usually then goes to commercial and they say, okay, we got to wait. But when you finally see it, we say, boy, that was a good play. God had a great play. God had a great play that he wanted his people to never forget. What's interesting in what he says here in verse 6, he turned the sea into dry land. They passed through the river on foot. Come, let us rejoice in him. He's actually talking about two different events here. The first event was after they came out of Egypt. The Israelites thought they, even though God had brought them out of Egypt through the Passover event, was now going to bring them out to die in the wilderness. Because in front of them was the Red Sea. To the sides of them were mountains, and in front of them was Pharaoh's army. There is no way that they were going to get out of this. All that they could see was death. But God said, I'm going to do something wonderful for my people today. And with his might and with his power, he caused the Red Sea to split in two. And the people crossed over on dry land. A great multitude of people crossed over on dry land. And while they were crossing over, God provided further protection for his people. Because between Pharaoh's army and the Israelites, God stood to protect them. God was their shepherd. God was their shepherd who saw the danger of the lion that wanted to attack. And said, I will stand and protect you. And while they were crossing on dry land, God was keeping Pharaoh's army away from them. And when they were safe, God lifted up, and then Pharaoh and his army came to attack the Israelites. But at that point, the waters went back to their usual place, and the Israelites were safe on the other side. This was God's providing, God's protecting his people. But then there's another event that's talked about here. And that was they passed through the river on foot. Once again, God wanted to let the Israelites know that he was with them. As he brought them out of Egypt, as they crossed the Red Sea, and God led them through the wilderness, now God was going to bring them into the Promised Land. Because they also crossed on dry ground as they crossed the Jordan River. As Joshua led his people into the Promised Land. One reason why God did that was for Joshua's sake, so that the people would know that as God was with Moses, God now is also with Joshua, his servant. But I also wanted the people to know that he was with them. He was going to protect them. Interesting thing was, it makes point of saying that they came in during the springtime. Why is that important? Well, for those of you in the Dakotas who knows what happened in springtime and what happens to the river when the snows melt and when the spring rains come. The Jordan River was at its biggest point at that time. Everybody in Canaan thought, we're safe from the Israelites. We're safe because the gods have given us the rain, swelled the river to keep these Israelites out. But then God said, no, I am with my people. I am going to protect them. I am going to lead them, and I am going to guide them, and I am going to give them this land. And so, once again, the water was split, the people crossed over. Now, even though it wasn't as dramatic as the first time, 2 times, God led his people across bodies of water on dry ground. One, to bring them into salvation, and one, to deliver them to where God had promised. See what God has done. Because God has done the same thing for us as well. We have crossed over into God's hand. God has led us. God has provided us. Paul one time says that compares the crossing of the Red Sea to being baptized into Christ. And that's how our life with Christ begins. Because God, through baptism, says to us, I'm going to deliver you from your enemies. I'm going to call you to be my people. I'm going to let you see my salvation and my deliverance. And that is ours. Because in baptism, we are united with Jesus in his death and his resurrection. Through our baptism, we realize that even though Jesus died nearly 2,000 years ago, we are united with that event. We are united with Christ. And because of that, what Christ accomplished 2,000 years ago is now realized in our lives. We have been delivered from our enemies. We have been saved. We have been rescued. And this salvation and this rescue now begins a new walk with our God. And our God will lead us like a shepherd. Our God will be with us. He will not leave us. He will not forsake us. In the wilderness, they had manna to eat. The Lord gives us his own body and his own blood so that we know that he is with us. He will feed us and he will strengthen us in this life. But there's also something else that our God will do. Our God not only delivered us from death, he also delivered us unto life. And so as the Israelites came into the promised land on dry land, so also our God delivers us and is with us. What a gracious God we have. Come and see that the Lord is good. Come and see. Because another thing our gracious God does, notice how we get these words of the psalm. It's not that God sent these words of the psalm to us. He gave them to the psalmist. Most people think or believe that even though it doesn't say that this is a psalm of David, but because it's in all the other ones around it are written by David, that this too is a psalm of David. But do you realize that the Psalms have many authors? David is just the primary author of the Psalms. There are about 10 authors of the Psalm, at least. And these people were inspired by God. Inspired by God to sing God's praises and to lead the other people into singing these praises of our God. God uses people. God uses pastors. God uses Sunday school teachers. God uses everyday Christians, everyday people that he has said, you are my child, to proclaim the goodness of our God. God uses each and every one of us. And why? So that we can do what the psalmist does. Point other people to who God is. To point other people to the goodness of our God. A God who loves us with an everlasting love. A God who has saved us and brought us unto life everlasting. A God who says, I will want you to be with me forever. A God who says to us, when you're struggling, I will be with you. When dangers are around you, I will protect you. A God who says, I will never abandon you. This God gives this message to us so that we can go around and tell other people, come and see. Come and see what God has done. Come and see a God of love. Come and see a God who forgives. Come and see the just God who says to us, I will be with you always. And at this time, a God who says to us, I come to you. I come to you so that you may know that God is good, that God has brought you into life, and he will deliver you to life everlasting. Amen. And now may the grace of God, which passes all understanding, keep our hearts and minds unto faith and life everlasting.